I mean, I get that on social media all the time. Hey, man, just stick to sports. Guess what? I'm more than a sports guy. I'm a human freaking being, and I have other takes and I have other interests and things. Guess what? I'm pretty well read on a lot of different things, and I'm a fairly intelligent individual. Guess what? Athletes are like that too.
Welcome to the Reindl Report.
Hey, here's a hot take for you. Steph Curry, most overrated basketball player I've ever seen.
A podcast out of San Diego, California that rewrites the definition of mediocrity.
Yeah, and I don't trust anyone that calls a hot dog a sandwich. Are you crazy?
Are you stupid or something?
And I'll tell you another thing. You know what? I think pineapples do belong on pizza.
Almost as stupid as a stupid does.
I think watching pitchers try to hit in baseball is one of the worst things in all of sports.
Oh my God, Paul, you make me so mad sometimes.
And I don't want to hear any of this 6-0 in the finals. LeBron James will retire as the GOAT.
Shut the up! Now, here's your host, Paul Reindl.
All right, welcome to it. Episode 50 of the Reindl Report. Wow, made it all the way to 50. Do I got 50 more in me? I'm not quite sure, but I'm looking forward to figuring it out. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. My name is Paul Reindl. This is the Reindl Report, a San Diego sports podcast, primarily talking about San Diego sports. We'll get a little bit of the national scene as well. Really special podcast here for you this week. LT going into the Hall of Fame. The NFL Hall of Fame induction ceremony was this past weekend. We are going to talk to somebody who was there. Derek Togerson from NBC7 covers the NFL. He's the sports reporter for NBC7. He was out in Canton for LaDainian Tomlinson's enshrinement into the National Football League Hall of Fame. So we're going to have a good conversation with Derek here coming up in a few minutes. Looking forward to connecting with him on all of that. Everything else that's going on in sports, well, the NFL is back, and the NFL kind of, it drives the ship. We talked about that we make jokes about how the NFL is king. Well, the NFL is king, and it's back. And the NFL is king because not going to hear a whole lot of baseball headlines coming up over the next few months. Wild card races. Look, the playoffs, as far as I'm concerned, in Major League Baseball, the Padres, they're not relevant. In the national baseball scene, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody. Okay, of course the Padres are relevant, but not really in the wild card race is what I meant. The Padres are not quite relevant in the wild card hunt. As far as I'm concerned, the playoffs are already pretty much set in Major League Baseball. I like the Dodgers and the Nationals on the National League side. I like the Yankees and the Astros on the American League side, and you would have to try really hard to convince me otherwise on those four teams. But later on, I want to talk about, there's a story in Major League Baseball. We will talk a little bit of baseball that you are aware of. You've heard of it, but you haven't really spent enough time on it. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to start first and foremost with the NFL Hall of Fame induction ceremony that went on this past weekend. Did I watch it? No, I did not. I watched it after the fact. I did not watch it live. Where was I on Saturday? I was at Del Mar. I was playing the ponies. It's at the old Del Mar racetrack. There was a concert that night. It was a lovely, lovely Saturday evening. I watched a little bit of Kenny Easley before I had to head out to the track, and so I missed all of LT, but I had it recording. My DVR didn't end up recording it because the ceremony went much longer than my DVR expected it to, but I got some thoughts on that as well. So I go online. The whole speech is up by the time I get home. All 26 minutes of LaDainian Tomlinson's speech. So I sat there and I watched it, and I don't say this to be exaggerating at all, and I know I might be speaking in hyperbole here. That speech that LaDainian Tomlinson gave on Saturday night at the NFL Hall of Fame induction ceremony, that was one of the most, if not the most, powerful speeches I've ever heard, certainly sports-related speeches. That was incredible. The way LT ended that speech, the last 5 or 6 minutes, I would say, talking about bringing his family history. And it was a speech of unity. All right, this was not some actor or actress accepting an Oscar and saying, and by the way, Trump, you suck. And, don't build the wall or, whatever. This wasn't like a stick to sports moment. This was the kind of moment where you just go, wow. I mean, I was speechless. I was literally speechless. I was sitting there watching this. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is incredible. So rather than me try to sit here and tell you about how good it was, I'm going to play you about 5 minutes of this clip here of this speech. I don't know if I've ever played a 5-minute long soundbite on this podcast, and I don't know if I'm going to ever play a 5-minute soundbite on this podcast again, but that's how important I thought this speech was. And if you've seen it, if you've heard it, if you know what I'm talking about, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you don't mind hearing it again because it was that good. And if you haven't heard it yet, just do me a favor. Open your ears, open your mind. Take a ride on LaDainian Tomlinson's family life, his family history. Talking about his great uncle coming over to America and how he didn't have a choice in how things played out for him. But we do have a choice. Here's LT Saturday night in Canton at the NFL Hall of Fame.
If this was my last day on earth and this my final speech, this is the message I'll leave with you. The story of a man I never met. My great-great-great-grandfather George. 170 years ago, George was brought here in chains on a slave ship from West Africa. His last name, Tomlinson, was given to him by the man who owned him. Tomlinson was the slave owner's last name. What extraordinary courage it must have taken for him to rebuild his life after the life he was born to was stolen. How did he reclaim his identity, his dignity, when he had no freedom to choose for himself? I grew up on the land of a former slave plantation. And although I didn't know this as a child, it is where my great-great-great-grandfather tilled the soil. A few years ago, I visited that same plantation in Central Texas with my family and stood in the slave quarters where he lived. It's now named Tomlinson Hill. My name began with the man who owned my great-great-great-grandfather. Now, it's proudly carried by me, my children, my extended family. People stop me on the street because they know me as LT, the football player. But after football, people have begun to recognize me as LaDainian Tomlinson. Not simply for what I did as a football player, but for who I am as a man. The family legacy that began in such a cruel way has given birth to generations of successful, caring Tomlinsons. I firmly believe that God chose me to help bring two races together under one last name, Tomlinson. I'm of mixed race, and I represent America. My story is America's story. All our ancestors, unless we're American Indian, came from another country, another culture. Football is a microcosm of America. All races, religions, and creeds living, playing, competing side by side. When you are part of a team, you understand your teammates, their strengths and weaknesses, and work together toward the same goal to win a championship. In this context, I advocate we become Team America. In sports, we're evaluated on our desire, ability, and given a chance to compete. America is the land of opportunity. Let's not slam the door on those who may look or sound different from us. Rather, let's open it wide for those who believe in themselves, that anything is possible, and are willing to compete and take whatever risk necessary to work hard to succeed. I'm being inducted into the Hall of Fame because my athletic ability created an opportunity for me to excel in the sport I love. When we open the door for others to compete, we fulfill the promise of one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. On America's team, let's not choose to be against one another. Let's choose to be for one another. My great-great-great-grandfather had no choice. We have one. I pray we dedicate ourselves to be the best team we can be, working and living together, representing the highest ideals of mankind, leading the way for all nations to follow. One of the most eloquent orators of our time said it best in his farewell address. Paraphrasing and humbly building upon what President Obama said, we all have to try harder, show up, dive in, and stay at it. I am asking you to believe in your ability to bring about change, to hold fast to the faith and the idea whispered by slaves. Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Thank you for this honor. God bless you.
All right, there it was. LaDainian Tomlinson, Saturday night. That was the final 5 minutes and change from his Hall of Fame induction speech on Saturday night in Canton. And I just, hearing it again, you know, I'm floored. I'm just, that was so passionate, so powerful. One of, if not the best sports speech I've ever seen. And I can't wait to talk with Derek Togerson again from NBC7 here in just a matter of moments and get his thoughts on what it was like. What was the energy in the room like after LaDainian Tomlinson, metaphorically drops the mic? I mean, he just absolutely killed it. He crushed that speech. Obviously, he saved the best for last. It was incredible. So what else happened at the NFL Hall of Fame on Saturday? Kurt Warner, he went in. His story was pretty remarkable. Was his speech going to live up to the hype? It really didn't. I wasn't too happy with Kurt Warner's speech, if I'm just being completely honest. Given the fact that, you know about Kurt Warner, and if you don't, I mean, just quick Google search here on Kurt Warner. Okay, the guy was like bagging groceries, all right, coming up through the Arena Football League. Now he's in the NFL Hall of Fame. I was expecting a little more out of his speech. It was very vanilla, cut and dry, just kind of knew what you were going to get ahead of time. Jerry Jones, I thought was fantastic. Classic Jerry Jones. Jerry, listen here, Jerry. Jerry was great. Calling out members of the media by name and acknowledging them. Sharing stories about, making jokes about Jimmy Johnson and at Jimmy Johnson's expense. And if you don't know about Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones, they had a pretty ugly, public divorce in the mid-'90s or whatever. And quite frankly, the Cowboys really haven't been the same ever since, but that's neither here nor there. There was a story, a narrative going around after the NFL Hall of Fame. And I'm going to ask Derek, who was actually there, what his thoughts are. People saying that the NFL Hall of Fame, they need to cut down on how much time they are allowing these athletes to have on the stage and keep it under, it's like 5.5 hours long on Saturday night. And I get it. Look, that's a long time. That's a long broadcast. That's a long time to be covering this. It's a long time to be sitting in your seat, working, writing, whatever you're doing, whatever you're there. If you're there covering it, if you're there just enjoying it, if you're, maybe you're only there for one person. Maybe you don't give a damn about the other 5 or 6 guys going into the Hall of Fame. You're just there for your one person that you've supported and that you were a fan of. Maybe. But look, this is the culmination, the most important day of these athletes' careers. Certainly of their careers, maybe of their entire lives. Who are we? Who am I to tell them, hey, keep it under 10 minutes? For the love of God, keep it under 10 minutes. No, come on, man. I don't know what you do for a living. If you're at work right now listening to this podcast, I don't know where you're at, what you're doing. But if there was a Hall of Fame for your career and you worked your ass off, I mean, blood, sweat, tears for your entire life, and you eventually got recognized into that Hall of Fame, who would anybody be to tell you, hey, can I have this big ceremony, national TV, keep it under 5 minutes if you can, okay? Come on, man. By the time they get done thinking their families were already at 5 to 10 minutes. I have no problem with somebody taking 20 to 30 minutes, which is about the average time on Saturday night. I think it was Kenny Easley, maybe Jason Taylor. One of them was the shortest amount of time spent, and it was 19 and a half minutes. Okay. LT was right in the middle at 26 minutes on his speech length. I had no problem with it. I mean, that clip that I just played you, it was about 5.5 minutes. Did it feel like 5.5 minutes? I don't think so. Because it was moving. It was passionate. You were engaged with the audio. So I have no problem with that. But while we're on the topic of the NFL Hall of Fame, let's say hello to our next guest. His name is Derek Togerson, sports reporter for NBC7. You can follow him on Twitter at DerekNBCSD. Derek, how's it going? Welcome back to the podcast. I saw that you were in Canton. Anything special in particular you were there for?
No, nothing going on last weekend in Canton, Ohio.
Nothing going on? Okay, good. Just out there visiting some family?
They were there for the golf tournament.
There for the golf tournament.
Hey, World Golf Championship, the last one of the year. We had to go check it out.
Yeah.
Geki Matsuyama, he had a heck of a final round.
Wow, you came prepared. I was just trying to make it funny. You came prepared for this. I love it.
Sports is my job, man. What's up?
Actually, just being serious, did you check out anything other than what we're about to spend a few minutes talking about in Canton, Ohio?
No, I wanted to go to the First Ladies Museum, which is there, and that's not a joke. Actually, it is there, and I would have loved to see that. But no, when you get there and you're doing, 17 stories in 2.5 days, you kind of get locked in on just the one major event happening.
Sure. So, NFL Hall of Fame this past weekend. This podcast again being recorded on a Tuesday evening. So, Derek, really just kind of set the scene before we start to get into the particulars of the weekend. Your opening thoughts on your experience this weekend in Canton. I mean, have you been there before? I imagine possibly for Junior Seau just a couple of years ago. What was it like this weekend out there in Canton for you?
Correct. I have been there before. It was for Junior. Very different vibe this year. Obviously, because the circumstances being so completely different. When you're covering a guy like that with the circumstances and the situation with his untimely passing, this was a celebration, an absolute celebration. And what really struck me is probably what struck everybody else, and that is LT's speech, man. That was, wow. I mean, we all knew that he's a thoughtful guy. We all knew that he had that kind of thing in him. I don't think anybody knew he would pull it off with the aplomb that he pulled it off with. I mean, he showed us a whole new side of him that is incredible as an orator, and I was infinitely impressed.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I sent a text message the next day to somebody. I didn't watch it live. I was doing my thing on a Saturday. I had it DVR'd, and when I went back and watched it, I texted a friend, and I said, look, I know you don't care about the Chargers, you don't care about LaDainian Tomlinson that much, but if you didn't see this, which you probably didn't, you need to go back here, watch these 6 minutes, the end of the speech. And I even played it on this podcast earlier before we brought you on, Derek. I mean, it's not something I don't think I've ever played 6 straight minutes of sound, and I don't know if I ever will, but it was that important. I was like, this is one of the most powerful sports-related speeches I think I've ever heard.
Oh, it was worth it. You go 6 minutes. I mean, look, remember the Gettysburg Address was only 3.5 minutes, and it's one of the greatest speeches of all time. That 6 minutes was amazing in that he's not just fighting against people who don't like sports people going to political commentary. He was able to bridge the gap between left, right, and in the political spectrum, black, white, and in the racial tone of America. He was able to just cut right to a point that all of us need to hear, and do it in a way that didn't come across as preachy or as demeaning or as begging. The tone that he was able to strike was so pitch perfect that everyone had to sit up and go, this guy's making some damn good points. And he's absolutely right. And man, and in the way he prefaced it with his family's history and saying, I love my name. I am here because of my name, and my name is going to be carried on, and this is the significance of my last name. He carries that with him, and I think that's a story that I've heard before. But I think for a lot of people, it unlocks the way that he went about his entire career, in that he was always outspoken when asked questions. He was always honest and heartfelt and thoughtful when asked questions, even when he was saying things that were unpopular with a lot of people. And people don't like it when athletes, especially black athletes, have opinions and have strong opinions. But what he was able to do was make everyone, regardless of race, creed, color, say, that you know what? He's right. And we probably need to start rethinking the way we do a lot of things, not just in the National Football League, but in America in general.
I couldn't agree more with that. I'm looking at another story in football, polarizing, political,
Don't
race.
say Colin Kaepernick.
I'm not comparing the two at all, but I'm just saying when you hear the Colin Kaepernick narrative, and there are people that are so turned off, and they're just saying that, it's the stick to sports groups, and they say I disagree with things or I agree.
Well, those are the people who are going to dismiss anyone who has a competing opinion and find a way to do it regardless of where they're from because they don't want to hear it. Right. They're going to go back to a stereotype of athletes don't know what they're talking about. Stick to sports. I mean, I get that on social media all the time. Hey, man, just stick to sports. Guess what? I'm more than a sports guy. I'm a human freaking being, and I have other takes and I have other interests and things. Guess what? I'm pretty well read on a lot of different things, and I'm a fairly intelligent individual. Guess what? Athletes are like that too. LT is a very intelligent individual, and he has every right in the world to talk about things other than sports. That's one of the problems that he was addressing. Stop pigeonholing people into just, you do this, you do this, you do this. Shut up about everything else. That's wrong, and there's so many people of so many diverse talents in this country. Why can't we do more than just one thing? It's infuriating. You can't tell that in the tone of my voice.
No, fire, straight fire from Derek Togerson on Twitter at DerekNBCSD. But no, I mean, I'm right there with you. This was powerful is the only word I can really come to find. I mean, it was jaw-dropping. I just sat there and I watched the whole 26 minutes that it was, but I go, man, those last 5 or 6 minutes ended up being exactly 6.5 minutes or whatever. I mean, I was like, I'm excited. I'm tired. I'm mentally exhausted after just following along on that journey of this man's entire life, his family history in just a matter of minutes. The way he put it together, it was so moving.
It really was. I'll give you another word that I hope that it was, and that's impactful. Mm-hmm. I hope that what he said has an impact on people, and people don't just go in the moment, because in America we all have some form of ADHD where we all go, wow, that's amazing. Oh, what are the Kardashians doing? Like we go after the next shiny thing in the water and just chase that because the collective consciousness is drive the news cycle and what's coming next. I hope that people don't just look at that in a vacuum of this week and go, hey, wow, that was tremendous, well done, and then not take the next step in the thought process and go, we need to act on it. I hope that we're able to keep it in mind and actually act on it and start enacting some real change in this country.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I go back to, just on that point alone, I go back to a couple years ago, or maybe it was just last year, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade at the ESPY saying, look, it's time for us as athletes with our platform and the money that we have and the support that we have and the network that we have. It's time to stop saying, hey, let's think about doing stuff and let's actually get out there and doing stuff. Let's put our money where our mouths are. Let's start that
they've jumped right
conversation.
on that, haven't they?
Say that again?
They've jumped right on that, haven't they?
They did. So, I mean, I don't know. I agree. I hope it is impactful. I hope that at the very least, it's the conversation was happening based on what LT said. I mean, I saw USA Today did a really good story saying the most impactful speech, you've heard in a long time. And I really do hope that there is a message to be heard. I just hope people were willing to actually take 6 minutes out of your day and listen to it.
Derek, I'll give you another example here of this exact kind of thing.
Sure.
There were two African American running backs in the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s who went about things very differently. All right, I'll tell you what they did, and then what ended up with them, and you're going to kind of see my point here with the whole athlete should be seen but not heard nonsense. All right, one of them was an outspoken leader for African American rights, civil rights movement. He was vilified by people. People didn't want to hear what he had to say, and they said that this is not the kind of guy that we want around. The other one, eschewed, even at the behest of the other one, hey, get involved. You have a voice. Get involved. Said, nope, so I'm not doing that. I don't want to have a political voice. I'm going to kind of play it safe. So he went into the entertainment business, became beloved. Everybody loved this guy. He was doing commercials. He was on TV. The first guy was Jim Brown. The second guy was O.J. Simpson. Where do we see those guys now? It's okay. Jim Brown is now loved by everyone who ever meets him, but he stood up and he spoke out in a time that was extremely, even more unpopular then than it is now. Well, Jim Brown now today is lauded as almost a Muhammad Ali type of man of character. And the whole O.J. story. So and we still don't learn our lessons, why can't you listen to the guy who has an intelligence to him and a good take to him and who wants to get involved and help out an entire community? I will never understand that.
Yeah, God, just following along there. I'm like, where's he going with this? Okay, Jim Brown, I'm assuming that's who he's talking about. And then I had to wait until I heard commercials and corporate America, and I go, oh, I have an idea of who that other running back is. Derek, a couple more things before I let you go here, wrapping up the trip to Canton. Obviously, you were out there for LaDainian Tomlinson, so you might be a little biased, but if you leave LT aside, what other speeches, what other parts of the weekend stood out to you? I mean, Kurt Warner probably had the most impactful story that you knew going into it. I mean, this is a guy that was bagging groceries and now is an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback. Jerry Jones going in. Kenny Easley had a really good speech. What stood out to you speech-wise?
I hated Kurt Warner's speech. I absolutely hate it. I mean, we've heard the story. He was dry as can be. Like, dude, come on. You're putting us. We're all tired after 5 hours out here anyway. Quit putting us to sleep. Tell us something we don't know. Kurt Warner's speech was crap as far as I'm concerned. Terrell Davis, our other San Diego guy, when he told the story about staring down the barrel of a shotgun, and that was the thing that really turned his life around. That was one of those, whoa. This is a guy who was on a bad path and turned it around and become, one of the nicest guys you're going to meet as well. And that, I think, really drove him to be an amazing running back. Hearing that story was really cool. I loved the stories that Jerry Jones was telling. The one about the Samurai Trophy and trying to get Jimmy to go win that, and then they end up with the Lombardi Trophy. And Johnson, all those months later, says, "You still want that Samurai Trophy?" Some of the stories that Jerry told were awesome, and he told them in that typical Jerry Jones, Arkansas twang. So it was. I really liked his stuff a lot. Kenny Easley was really good. The stuff he said about Ronnie Lott was very humbling. It was the one that kind of just slipped by me. It was kind of there was Jason Taylor. He was like he's got the one that got the most emotional. But it was just kind of still of okay, he's out there thanking everybody. I'm not really moved by this. Morton Anderson could take that stuff on the road doing stand up. That material was fantastic. He's a funny dude. So he brought the levity of the evening. But I guess what really struck me overall was the star power of this class was tremendous. I mean, you've got one of the top two of the top running backs of all time, the best postseason running back of all time, a quarterback who went to 3 Super Bowls and as we all know, has that story. The man who is Roger Goodell's puppet master, who completely, revamped the way the NFL does things, and Jerry Jones, the all-time leading scorer in the NFL, one of the most dominant, disruptive forces on the defensive line ever, and the best AFC safety of all time. That's a heck of a class to go in all at one time.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a very special class. A lot of good speeches. I certainly watched more than I thought I would watch. I thought, I'm going to for sure watch LT. I did watch Kurt Warner just because, and I agree, I was a little disappointed with the actual speech because I knew the story heading into it. I thought, all right, this is something you're going to want to pay attention to. I thought Jerry Jones it was classic Jerry. It was so good. And how he's singling out, members of the media by name and the interaction with Jimmy Johnson. I absolutely loved it. But, there's a narrative going around that the NFL, they need to significantly limit the time for these speeches. Now, you were there. I've never been to a Canton Hall of Fame induction ceremony, so I could be completely ignorant to the subject, but I kind of find myself at least falling more towards the side of, man, this is the pinnacle of these guys' lives almost. Certainly their professional career, but maybe their life. If they want to go for 20 minutes, let them go for 20 minutes. It doesn't bother me. However, I can also see somebody being there covering one of the 5 or 6 guys going in, and they're going, oh, my God, it's been 5 hours. Where do you kind of fall on that?
I think if you're going to change it now, you're going to, short everybody who's doing it now. Hey, man, Tim Brown, I was there for that one. He went in with Junior. He talks for, 50-something minutes? Something ridiculous like that. Like, you're going to – if you're going to the ceremony, you know what you're in for. It's one of those things where it's like, listen, if you choose to come here, you're playing by those rules because that's what's going to happen. And, yeah, these guys get long-winded, but like you said, this is the culmination of, for a lot of them, from the time they played Pop Warner football, you're talking about, 30 years of football in their lives. You can't wrap that up in a 15-minute speech. At least most of them can't. We're not Joe Pesci at the Academy Awards here.
Right.
You got to give these guys, the ability to go. And what I would suggest, though, and I don't, you can't make this a rule, but what I love is the stories. Like you talked about the Jerry Jones story, you talked about the Terrell Davis story, LT telling the story about his family and Tomlinson Hill. I would love these guys to focus more on, let me tell you some of the awesome stories that you've never heard before. Like my favorite thing from a road trip. Those are the things that I really find myself gravitating towards, and I think a lot of people do too, but maybe just, encourage them to say, let us into your world a little bit. Tell us some cool stories, not just thanks to my agent, thanks to my trainer, that's all the typical stuff, but give us some more stuff, man. That's what I would love to see them do more of, because when you're doing that, like you said with the LT, it's 6.5 minutes long. Does it feel like 6.5 minutes when you're listening to it?
No, not at all.
Not even close. It feels like 2. So if you can engage me and give me good stories, then you can talk as long as you want to, because I'll be with you on the ride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Talking with sports reporter for NBC7, Derek Togerson on Twitter at DerekNBCSD. Last thing before I let you go, Derek, and I appreciate the time. We are, as a sports fan, as a sports community, we're transitioning into football season. NFL is here. Preseason football getting underway this week. College football camp starting up here. It's here. And with our particular market in San Diego, baseball probably not going to be dominating the headlines now for the next, 6, 7, 8 months now that we have the NFL and football returning. But this year in particular, going to be have a different feel to it football-wise with the Chargers no longer in San Diego. How has it been for you? Kind of, I hate to be so vague in that question, but how has it been for you? I mean, I've certainly changed how my feelings have been towards the Chargers and towards how am I going to watch football this year. Obviously, feelings were a little more intense back in January than they are now in August, but how's it been going for you?
Well, I'm basically able to say all the stuff that I couldn't say before now because, we don't have a partnership with the team anymore.
Sure.
So for me, the gloves are off.
Yeah.
This is actually going to be a very interesting season
Yeah.
for covering Chargers football, which we're still going to do. We're still going to go to as many of the games as we can. Still going to do football night in San Diego on Sunday nights after the NBC Sunday Night Football game, which, by the way, shameless plug, only the second TV show in history after American Idol to be number one in prime time for 6 straight seasons. So thank you to everybody out there who watches it. It's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting to see, and I'm really not going to know until we get up, even to the first preseason game this Sunday, which I'll be going up to. You're not going to know until you get up there and you feel the vibe, until you actually see 17 and 85 on the field doing their thing, and those emotions, they get stirred a little bit. I'm not entirely certain how we're all going to feel or deal with this. The hatred for the ownership group will never dissipate. I mean, people still in San Diego still vilify and can't stand Eli Manning. What are they going to do to this ownership group? It's you can forget about that. So a lot of people will be rooting for the guys to do well because you still love the players. But and I think somebody said it on Twitter best, if there's a way for Phillip to throw for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns every week but have him lose 48-45, I'd take that. So that's I think how a lot of people are going to be looking at this. But I know for me, the way I'm going to cover it is, hey, when they do something stupid, when the organization does the stories that I have that I couldn't tell before, you'll be hearing a lot more stories.
Yeah, well, did you wish Mike Williams a happy birthday last week?
I did not because I know how to work a calendar.
Oh my gosh! Well, if that's the kind of coverage we're going to be getting out of you, definitely excited to follow along because there's going to be quite a few opportunities to kind of poke fun at a team that maybe you weren't previously able to do so. But I do think it will be interesting, just kind of seeing. Kind of gauging the temperature of the city and the sports fans here in San Diego. Obviously, there are Chargers fans still in San Diego. Hate to break it to you, somebody listening in right now that has sworn them off. There are still Charger fans here in San Diego.
Oh, a ton of them. Yeah, there are a ton of them, and that's the other thing. Is you can't go too far the other way of just hate covering them. You can't just be looking for every little thing they do wrong. Keep focusing and harping on that because. What if against every odd in the book, because their early season schedule is incredibly difficult, they start off 4-1? Mm-hmm. People are going to, despite themselves, they're going to get sucked back into rooting for this team. So you just don't know, and you can't. Like I said, you're still going to love Phillip and Antonio and Jason and these guys. You're still going to want them to do well and root for them, but. It's going to be really weird. Once you get into it, that's when you know how it's actually going to come about. You can predict and try and think about it as much as you want to. You're not going to know until you feel it.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more, my man. His name is Derek Togerson. He's a sports reporter for NBC7, and he's on Twitter at DerekNBCSD. Derek, I really appreciate the time. I've kept you longer than I said I would have, so really enjoyed this conversation. You already made a shameless plug in a couple answers back. Anything else you would like to plug before we say goodbye?
Oh, how much time do you have left?
Do your thing, man. Do your thing.
No, you're good. No, I appreciate you having me on. Always good to talk sports, man, especially with guys in town who are kind of in the same boat that I am. So, thanks for the invite, and I'm happy to do it whenever you want me on.
You got it. I will definitely keep you up to that. Be following along for some funny Twitter stories and maybe a little few jabs at the team that no longer resides in San Diego. We'll have to have you back on for story time. Derek, really appreciate it, man.
You got it, man. If anybody out there can come up with good hashtags for covering this team this year, let me know. Just send them to me on the Twitter.com because then we can kind of all be in on the joke together.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be fight for something. Hashtag fight for something. Derek, really appreciate it, man.
Hashtag fight for mediocrity.
Love it. Fight for mediocrity. Yeah. I would agree with that. Fight for mediocrity. Fight for Costa Mesa. Fight for you name it. Whatever. Chargers, they got a lot to be fighting for here. I really appreciate that. Good work out of Derek Togerson. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at DerekNBCSD, sports reporter for NBC7. Some strong takes, some passionate opinions there, and it was really good to have him on the show to talk about his experience out there covering the NFL Hall of Fame, covering LaDainian Tomlinson over there in Canton. I really appreciate it. We'll definitely be having Derek on once or twice more throughout the NFL season. You can count on that. All right, one other story as we start to wrap things up here on episode 50 of the Rhino Report. I want to stick to the NFL here and get to the story of the week, the story of the day, whatever you want to call it. The Dolphins. Ryan Tannehill, he goes out on Friday, gets hurt. Dolphins don't know how long he's going to be out for. Bunch of names start popping up. Colin Kaepernick, obviously. Tony Romo. No. Jay Cutler. Cuddy. Smoking Jay. Back in the news. So Jay Cutler, who retired because he wasn't good at football, was just over it. The guy that, the Bears had moved on from. The guy that the Bears said, well, we're going to go ahead and you're out, so we're going to go give Mike Glennon $45 million. And we don't have a whole lot of confidence in him, so we're also going to use our number one pick on Mitch Trubisky. Okay? Jay Cutler was a horrible quarterback. And I don't know what it is. It's going to sound like Jay Cutler, kicked my dog or something. He didn't, okay? Daphne would kick his ass. Tell you that right now. It's nothing personal against Jay Cutler. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, I can't stand the guy. Couldn't stand him when he was in Denver. I certainly couldn't stand him in Chicago. It was just the body language. The guy seemed like he didn't give a crap. So this guy retires, goes into the Fox television booth, going to be calling games. That I actually would have been interested in. I would have been interested in what he would have to say, like, that guy's a freaking loser. You know what I mean? Like, I could just see him sitting next to Troy Aikman or Joe Buck and just going, yeah, I've got a story about that guy. And then, whoa, Jay, can't say that on the air, man. And I thought that would have been funny. But whatever. So Jay Cutler, he's back. He's in the league. The Dolphins, they gave him 10 million reasons why he should consider coming out of retirement to play for them. And I get it, okay? I get it. My initial thoughts were, wow, good God, Colin Kaepernick completely getting blackballed. This is an active quarterback who's in better shape, who's been to a Super Bowl, and they're bringing in Jay Cutler. Kidding me? I could still make an argument for that. I think I just did. But I completely understand. Look, Adam Gase worked with Cutler in Chicago. He had somewhat of a relationship with Colin Kaepernick, but not nearly the relationship that he has with Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler, kind of the quarterback where he can just come in and, plug and play sort of thing. They don't have to redo the entire playbook. They don't have to revamp the entire offense if you're bringing in like a guy like Colin Kaepernick. So I get it. But that was the big news. Those are my thoughts. Now you know I hate Jay Cutler. If you didn't already know it. If you don't know, now you know. And the other headline I see making some rounds over the last few days was involving Tom Brady. And I came up with what I think is an hilarious idea, okay? I want you to follow along here. This is what I think Tom Brady should do. So over the offseason, his wife, Gisele Bündchen, I don't know, Gisele, she comes out and says that, there's all that conversation about Tom Brady and concussions, and was he actually having concussions? Was he not listed? Were the Patriots not putting him on the, injury list, anything like that? Because the NFL, very strict when it comes to the concussion policy and protocol. You have to, you got to list all your injuries. You got to list anybody that had concussion-like symptoms. Did they make it through the protocol? All of that stuff. So it was kind of a big deal, like, to hear, oh, Tom Brady's had all these concussions. How has he never missed games? How has he never missed a practice because of all these concussions? Patriots, as far as we're concerned, Patriots say, no, he's never had a concussion. So last week at the end of the week, I think it was like Friday, Tom Brady comes out and says, he's doing a press conference, and a reporter asks him about something about concussions. And he just kind of says something like, what? I don't think that's anyone's business anymore. I don't think it's anybody's business. And real quick, before I get to what I think would be funny, it is people's business, Tom. And I'm a big fan of Tom Brady's. I can't get enough of the guy. I love the guy, okay? This guy, I understand why people hate him, but I freaking love Tom Brady. I just freaking love the guy, all right? He is the best football player I've ever seen, best quarterback. He knows he's the best quarterback. Dude still cheats, gets away with it, doesn't care. Doesn't even care. I kind of dig that. I love that. All right? He's got a hot-ass wife. He wears freaking Uggs, and he just doesn't care. He's like, dude, I'm Tom Brady. I don't care. I don't care what you think of me. I'm Tom Brady. My life's better than yours. And he just kind of has that arrogance to him. I kind of like it. So I think it would be so funny if Tom Brady were to just start doing this like troll job with the media for the entire season. Some Marshawn Lynch-esque trolling, you know. Marshawn would come up and he'd only talk because he had to. Just, I'm here so I won't get fined. Or he would say something like, I'm thankful. Marshawn, how's your stomach doing? I'm thankful. Marshawn, how about that huge run in the fourth quarter? I'm thankful. You know what I mean? I think Tom Brady should play it off like he's got a concussion every single week when the media comes up to him. Tom, huge pass on 3rd and 20 there in the third quarter. What was the play call on that one? Wait a second. We had a 3rd and 20? Huh? Or, Tom, walking off the practice field. Tom, how's the arm feeling today? Oh, sorry, guys. I can't do this today. I've had a headache for like 4 straight days. I just can't do it anymore. I think that would be so funny. Now, somebody out there is thinking I'm an asshole because I'm making fun of concussions, and concussions are not anything to be making fun of. No shit, Sherlock, okay? I'm not sitting here. I'm not trying to make fun of it. I'm just saying Tom Brady, the way he does the way he carries himself, I think this would fall right into his wheelhouse. I think it'd be funny. It would obviously be a joke. If you don't have a sense of humor about that, then I just don't know what else to tell you. I think it would be hilarious if you're just messing with the media, okay? It was funny when Marshawn Lynch did something like that. I think it'd be funny if Tom Brady did it. Guys, you're going to have to ask Giselle. I don't remember I don't remember what you're talking about. How New England Patriots would that be? Huh? I don't know. Maybe I'm just absolutely crazy. Maybe I have a sick sense of humor. But, hey, I'm a sick puppy. I think it'd be hilarious, and I hope that happens. I don't know if it will. Tom hasn't responded to my texts. He hasn't gotten back to me yet. But if he does, I'll let you know. See if we can get him on the podcast. So wrapping things up, I did tease earlier in the podcast, there was one story in Major League Baseball that you're probably aware of. You subconsciously, at the very least, know about it. But you haven't done a whole lot of digging, and it hasn't gotten really the attention I think it deserves. So I just wanted to spend a few seconds talking about it. The Los Angeles Dodgers. They are on an absolutely amazing run. They are having a historical season. And I don't know who your team is. I don't know if you're a Padres fan. I don't know if you're just a West Coast guy. I don't know where you're at in the world listening to this podcast. Hopefully we're going global. But the Los Angeles Dodgers, they're having an incredible season. And at the time this podcast is being recorded, again, this is on the afternoon of Tuesday the 8th. By the time it gets published, probably late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. So things could be different, a game here or there. But at the time I'm speaking these words, the Los Angeles Dodgers, their record is 79-32. They've played 111 games. All right, I did the math. And I saw a graphic that was on television. So TV kind of helped me do the math. That's 111 games. 79-32. They have played 111 games. They are right on track with the 2001 Mariners for the all-time regular season wins record. Seattle Mariners and the 1908, the 01 Mariners and the 1908, I think it was, Cubs, of 116 wins. At this point in the season, at least in 2001, I couldn't tell you about Chicago's 1908 season, but at this point in 2001, after 111 games, the Seattle Mariners were 80-31. The Dodgers are 79-32. They're just one game off that pace. The Dodgers could set the all-time single-season, regular season record for wins in a season. They could easily get hot and continue to stay hot, I should say. Not getting hot, they're just staying hot. And beat that Seattle Mariners record. They're one game off. We just got into August. They're just getting rolling. They just got Yu Darvish at the trade deadline. This is a team that's gone 43-7 in their last 50 games. All they do is win, win, win. But I know there's a lot of Padres fans that do listen to this podcast. They hate me more than they already normally do right now because I'm spending all this time talking about the Dodgers. I'm not talking about the Padres dropping 2 out of 3 to the Pirates this weekend or how the Padres are going to do against the Reds this week. I will say this. The Nationals are coming to town. I'm pretty excited for that series. Definitely going to go down there and want to check out. I think I might have seen Bryce Harper play once in person, but, you know, I think TV, the viewing experience on television has kind of ruined the wow factor for me of going to games and seeing all these athletes. But growing up, I mean, that was a big deal for me. I'd be like, wow, Roger Clemens is pitching in Seattle this weekend. I've never seen him. I have to go to that game. I've still never seen LeBron James play live. Going to try to make it up to Staples Center at some point this year and see them when the Cavs come to town. But Bryce Harper is coming to town, and that alone, that's going to get my butt down to Petco Park. He's got that much star power. Bryce Harper is one of a very few amount of guys that you can tell me that they're going to be playing in my city, in baseball at least. Basketball, NFL, other things. Well, I'm not going to have a lot of NFL games here, but you know what I'm saying. Baseball-wise, Bryce Harper is one of a very select few that I can go, wow, I have to see this guy play. All right, this is must-see baseball. Television's kind of ruined that for me. I mean, you got a much better seat at home. I don't care if, you know, it's Tom Brady coming into town. I got a better seat watching it on TV than I do driving down to Qualcomm Stadium and watching, you know, paying all this money, having a seat up in the nosebleeds and all that. So I'm excited that Bryce Harper and the Nationals are coming to town. I don't know what the pitching matchups are going to be. I don't know who's going to be throwing, but it should be fun. So if you're going down there, let me know. Shoot me a tweet. Meet up, okay? On that note, you can follow me on Twitter at PaulReindlSD. And wrapping things up, you can catch this podcast as well as any other podcast. 50! We've done 50 podcasts. You can find them all on theReindlReport.com. Any podcast, all my interviews, everything's loaded up right there for you. And you can also go on iTunes and find the podcast there as well. And this is the same shameless plug that I make every single episode. And you just go on your smartphone. If you have an iPhone, download the podcast app. It's the purple microphone thingy guy right there. You click on that. You search for the Reindl Report. You find the podcast, hit subscribe, and what that does is within just a matter of minutes, like 10, 15 minutes between me pressing submit to the podcast, you actually will get it on your phone. You will get a notification that says new episode of the Reindl Report available. And if you can go ahead and listen to that and leave a comment, share your thoughts, give me some feedback, all right? I'm doing this because I have fun, but I'm doing this for you. However many of you there are, I'm doing this for you guys. Okay, I want to know what you want me to talk about. I want you to tell me what you want my thoughts on. What sucks? What's better? What could be better? What do you like? What do you don't like? Let me know. All right, I'm always open for feedback. So whether it's on comments, on Twitter, whatever. Again, my thanks to Derek Togerson from NBC7. A lot of good thoughts there on LaDainian Tomlinson and the NFL Hall of Fame. Coming up, we got NFL, college football, a lot to get to. Gonna have some preview type podcasts coming up. Until then, I will talk to you later.